everyone, I'm Lillian.
And I'm Felipe.
And we are the Postmodern family.
We are Americans living in the UK searching for Great Britain.
Did you guys know that I'm 37 weeks pregnant? Like right now. Just so you were wondering why my face is fat. Okay. We make 3 new videos every week, and we would love it if you subscribe to our channel.
And if you're wondering why my face is fat, it's just the way it normally looks.
It's because of the beard.
In this episode, we're reacting to an interview of Anthony Burgess by the famous interviewer Parkinson. Anthony Burgess is the famous author of A Clockwork Orange.
Okay.
Which
when was it written?
It was written apparently originally 1960. Started to be written, but I think it wasn't published till maybe a couple years after that, maybe.
Okay.
So
what's
early
this
60s.
Book about?
The book is about a dystopian future and centers around a young man who's struggling with a desire for violence at all times.
Okay.
And so he leads gangs and gets in legal trouble with the law and goes through some state-sponsored behavioral modification therapy that works for a time, then doesn't work. And then there's one last chapter that is redemptive out of 12, apparently.
Okay.
I haven't read the book,
okay,
but I studied a little bit up on it in preparation for this clip.
Did your homework.
A little bit, not a lot. I'm sure I'll say things wrong, and the British public will gladly correct me in the comments, very gleefully and glibly, I might add. But so he apparently credits the film making of Clockwork Orange by Stanley Kubrick in 1972, I think, for his book becoming as famous as it did. So before then, relatively...
Yeah, and Stanley Kubrick did like all these new tricks.
Art Nouveau,
yeah.
And
made it really artistic. Isn't that right?
I don't know. But it's a very dark, glorifying violence and sex, apparently, the movie does. It would be a creature of its time, which is 70s sort of cinema. So in this clip, they're interviewing him, not so much about A Clockwork Orange, but about just what it is to be a writer in England. And a little bit of background on him. So he was Northerner, born in the North, Catholic family. He grew up Catholic, became lapsed, but then some say he returned to the church. Famously assisted in writing the script for a making of Jesus of Nazareth in the 70s that was approved by the Pope, released in Italy first, then Great Britain, and then the US. Very popular production of Jesus, the gospel story. So some Christian background there. Let's see what he says about writing and England.
You once said, might this be getting somewhere toward a simpler truth about it, that England doesn't like its writers?
I don't think England does, and I think I'd better say this in all seriousness, that if this country is going to be remembered in the history of the far distant future, it is not as the country of Margaret Thatcher or Sir Harold Wilson, not as the country that was the centre of a great empire, but the country that produced a great language. And I think English is the greatest language in the world, but also produced a great literature. I don't mean just Shakespeare, but a continual procession of writers who've been perhaps more appreciated abroad than in their own country. I won't mention names, but this is generally true. We're scared of writers here, and I don't know, because writers tell the truth, and in general, the British have not, in a way, it's a kind of wisdom, but the British have not been prepared to get down to reality in the same way that the French have. This is a virtue, because in 1940, the French thought intellectually about the war. They saw they couldn't defeat the Germans, they'd better yield and give in. But in England, we didn't think about that. We just went on fighting. This is a tremendous virtue. But the British have never been very good at thinking. They take things from day to day. They solve problems as they come along and don't work out philosophies of problems. In consequence, they're a bit scared of people who write books, because books set out philosophies, they set out whole visions of life, and they'd rather do without that. To some extent, we've been influenced by our politicians. Politicians don't like writers. They daren't like them because writers tell the truth, and politics is committed to only half the truth.
But you were talking earlier about the love of language that you have. In fact, you invented new language, haven't you, twice? Once in Clockwork Orange, where you invented this sort of futuristic slang.
Well, that had to be done because when I first wrote the book, this was in the period of the Teddy Boys and the Mods and Rockers. I wrote it in the kind of slang that was being used by young people in the early 1960s. Indeed, in the year 1960, 22 years ago. But then I realized that nothing dates more quickly than slang. Slang goes out of date in a few months, and the book would take a year to publish. So I scrapped this first version and visualized a group of youths who would be using a language made partly out of Russian and partly out of English. And so I invented the language that was used in Clockwork Orange. In fact, if you want to learn Russian, read the book, because there's a minimum vocabulary of about 300 Russian words. Many people who've learnt Russian have used this book, hand and leg and all the rest of it. And the idea was to present a kind of, well, this was prophetic in a sense, a kind of thug, a kind of juvenile delinquent who was above the state, who was above country, who was international. This was an international phenomenon, youthful violence, who would speak a language made out of the two major political languages of the world at that time, and still English and Russian, and yet would be untouched by politics. This was the idea.
Okay.
So, in terms of the first part where he talks about his opinion on how the English view writers. So firstly, he says that they're afraid of writers, and then he says because they tell them the truth. I think generally artists tend to hold the mirror to society and say this is kind of like what you are, because especially artists that succeed in society, who are upheld as let's say the best in their field, by the elite especially, tend to capture the prevailing ideologies and ideas circulating through the elite stratosphere. And whereas the pop artists sort of capture and reflect what popular culture is believing and thinking. So I think there's a sense in which the private nature of British society doesn't want the public to see their reflection in the mirror. And so there's a bit of fear about, maybe that's what he's alluding to, is that the British people don't want to have a mirror held to them and say, this is who you are. This is the truth of what you are. I think that's what he was alluding to.
I'm not sure.
But then he later elaborated and said, actually, so the British people have a virtue that they are not keen on establishing philosophical systems of thought. This is why they weren't subject to socialism and communism nearly as much as the French or the Germans or the Russians or other people groups. So there's an inherent skepticism in the British people to philosophical, especially complex, convoluted, idealistic philosophical systems. And I thought about it when he said that. I thought about it and I thought, well, hold on. Where does Christianity then sit in that? And Christianity as such is not a philosophical system. It's just a person and a single person and the claims that person makes about being God. So that's not a really complex philosophical system. That's very easy, very accessible. Whereas socialism, which is a system of thought underpinning the system of government of communism and national fascism, national socialism, they weren't so, let's say, romanced by or in love with as the French. And even in the French Revolution of the early 19th century, and these concepts of we must uphold a republic and get rid of a monarchy. Again, the Brits, some got caught into that, but the Brits were like, no, we stay with the monarchy that we've always had. We're not going to be like the French, et cetera, et cetera. So there's this inherent inertia of skepticism in the British people toward new philosophies.
Yes, I would agree with that. So I don't think that they're opposed to having the mirror held up. I think they're opposed to having new ideas and saying you need to change and do this and do that. So it depends on what kind of writer you're talking about. And if you're this avant-garde kind of writer who wants to push the boundaries of the people, then you're not going to be well received.
I see. Yeah, so the clever ones have understood that you need to just gradually push.
Yeah, maybe. But the ones that seem to be the most successful are the ones who are holding up the mirror, because I think the British do like to look at themselves and laugh.
In a comedic sense, I do agree, but not in a
critical sense.
I don't know. I could be wrong with that. I guess they do enjoy a cutting criticism of themselves as well as comedy.
Yeah.
So
I think it's the new that they're resistant to, but it's not that they're impermeable to, because clearly we have moved very far away
from the 60s and the 50s. But that was a slow change, not sort of a sudden, here's a new philosophical system of thought. Let's go 180 degrees.
Right.
Right. Whereas the French easily went from a monarchy to a republic, which is very, very different.
Was Orwell British? George Orwell? Yeah, so that's the kind of writer that I think the Brits love. It's like warning against change. It's like warning against other systems.
Right. Yeah. So apparently now let's talk about his little bit about the English language. He was very straightforward about it. English is the best. The greatest language ever. And the literature then of the English is the best ever. I thought, so this was in 1982, I think, if I did so 22 years after he wrote Clockwork Orange, which is 1960. So that interview was in 1982. So it would have been like the real heat of the Cold War. Cold War started right after World War II. Immediately, the disengagement between the West and Soviet Russia happened. But it really heated up in the 80s when it was done. So he's clearly influenced by that. He writes this novel where he mixes Russian and English together as the two languages that most matter. Whereas today, would you say that's true?
Russian's not really in it anymore.
Is Chinese in English? Or is it just English?
I don't know.
I don't know much about his philosophy. I do think that if what I've read about A Clockwork Orange is true, which is that 20 of the 21 chapters are spent in violence.
I thought you said 12 chapters.
Sorry, it's 3. It's 21
it's 7.
chapters. It's 21 chapters divided into 3.
Okay.
Parts, I think, and he said specifically 21 chapters because that signifies the maturation of people. Okay. Everyone is an adult at 21. And so,
but not in today's society. In the UK, you're an adult when you're 18.
Yeah, I don't know how he got that, but
I think the age went down over the years. Yeah.
But if 20 out of the 21 chapters are spent in violence, basically, and a dark dystopia, then I don't know what he's trying to achieve. I don't know how that reflects his mind.
I don't know. It's weird that he would be also a writer of the Jesus of Nazareth.
Yeah, so. I know. So how do you mix those two? I can't get my head around it. But people can be very complicated people and hold, especially men, hold fragmented, disintegrated.
I think women are very complicated too. Very complicated. Emotionally complicated.
Not intellectually complicated.
That's not true.
Size of the squirrel.
Is it not a problem that a woman have a smaller brain than a man?
That is wrong.
But the government scientist, Dr. Yamak, have proved it is size of squirrel.
Okay. So yeah, I think I would not be keen on. From what I've read, I'm not keen on watching.
No,
Clockwork
I don't
Orange.
think I would either.
Kubrick is a very dark,
Yeah.
sadistic director, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And the book, or interestingly, I was going to say is that last chapter,
Mm-hmm.
which is the redemption arc, he turns his ways or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Just one out of the 21 chapters.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, when the book was published, that last chapter was kept out. The American publishers convinced him that Americans would not believe that a redemptive arc. Yes, which is the total opposite of what I know between the British and the Americans.
Yeah.
So apparently that chapter was always kept out. Kubrick made his movie on the basis of the 20 chapters, which has no redemption arc in it. So it's just darkness.
Yeah.
That's all it is. And that's the Clockwork Orange that Americans know.
Yeah. Which they love, though.
Yeah, I think they
love
do.
It. They love the sadistic nature of it.
Yeah.
And it was so avant-garde.
Yeah, it's a cult classic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but in addition, certain libraries burned or got rid of the book, disavowed it, because it was so dark that they didn't want people having access to it. So it has like these books that get banned by libraries have a special sort of significance in culture, because it means something is someone has disapproved of that book and doesn't want people to read it.
Yeah.
So yeah, interesting story.
Thanks for watching this video. We hope you enjoyed it. Leave a comment below and let us know what other videos you'd like us to react to.
And become a patron at patreon.com/thepostmodernfamily.
And stay tuned. Well, the baby is going to be born soon. Bye.